Greetings, my name is Nina. Welcome back to my channel. For the last 2 years, starting I think in February 2023 or March, I don't remember, I have been watching the book Leo. I actually came across her in 2021, watched a few videos, and then in 2023 I came across her again and watched a lot of her videos. I need to point out that we have absolutely different tastes on things, absolutely different tastes in books, especially in the fantasy genre. However, I still watch her videos, and despite the fact that we have absolutely different tastes in books, I still found 11 books after watching her videos. And yeah, in this video I'm going to talk about the books that I read after watching the book Leo and what I think of them. The first one is The Yellow Wallpaper by Charlotte Perkins Gilman. I've never heard of this short story until I watched some of her videos. This is Penguin Little Black Classics, and this also includes Gilman's other short stories like The Rocking Chair and All the Water. But I remember this short story, The Yellow Wallpaper, pretty badly because I was on a plane when I read it and it went completely dark, and somehow I still managed to read it, but I did not reflect upon it. This is going to be a topic for another video, but I did struggle reading this, and not just because I was on a plane. But I would love to read it again. Okay, the next book that I discovered in her classics video, she made a video about classics. It's A Clockwork Orange by Anthony Burgess, so I heard about this book. However, I did not intend to read it until I watched her video. I know that in the original text, Burgess, I think he wrote a few words in Cyrillic. This was his writing style. He chose random words and wrote him in a different alphabet or something like that. However, he used the Russian words, and I'm holding the Russian translation, and it's kind of different here. Random words in the text are written in Latin instead of Cyrillic. To be honest, I found such writing style a bit odd, but then again, I was reading a translation. However, in overall, I really like the book. There are a few themes worth thinking about. I will reread this. Is her favorite, and surprisingly, it became my favorite too. Bunny by Mona Awad. Absolutely crazy novel. And recently, I reread it. I wouldn't recommend this book to everybody. It's not for everybody because it's kinda insane, I would say. There are a lot of crazy moments happening here, and basically this is a horror book. It's like Mean Girls, but set in university, and it's a horror. This is a book how merging with the popular Mean Girls can affect your psyche. Basically, this is what happens. And given that it's a horror, it gets kinda bloody. And there are things to speculate about. Okay, I read this writer's book a few years earlier, and I did not intend to continue reading his books. However, she convinced me otherwise. She convinced me to give this author another chance. So this is Sapiens by Yuval Noah Harari, A Brief History of Humankind. I thought I wouldn't read this because I read Yuval Noah Harari's 21 Lessons for the 21st Century, and I did not enjoy that one that much, and I did not think of him until I watched Leo's videos, and I decided to give this one a try. Yes, I did kinda also struggle reading this. I'm willing to read this one again. The book, like it says, is a brief history of humankind, and the author goes through agricultural revolution, religion, money, society, etc., and how it all came to be. By extension, I also read A Brief History of Tomorrow, but I did not really like that one enough. It was okay book, but I do not remember much, and I don't think I will be reading that again. This one, on the other hand, I'd love to read again. I've heard of this one, and I did not plan to read it until I came across Leo's video and she explained what this was all about. Sure, she said that it's better read in an audio version, and after reading this book, I understand why. However, I still went for the paper because I like reading paper books. So this is Daisy Jones and the Six by Taylor Jenkins Reid. Okay, those of you who have seen my previous videos know that I really like books with music themes. I have a video dedicated to books related to the topic, and I also have various music biographies. I have Nirvana, Metallica, Led Zeppelin, The Beatles, which I haven't read yet. And then I came across this book about a fictional band, and while reading, I was surprised that it was a fictional band and not a real one, because it felt very real, because it did feel like something that would have happened back in the 70s. This book is written in a form of a memoir where everybody gathers years later and tells what happened, what went down. So this book I originally borrowed, however I liked it very much and I decided to get my own copy, and I knew I wanted this one because I liked the cover a lot. The next book over here is Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. So these are the notes that Marcus Aurelius wrote for himself, and this is one of the original texts on Stoic philosophy. I did not finish this. I realized that buying this edition was a mistake because it's difficult for me to read in English, and I'm going to get rid of this one and get a Russian version because I couldn't handle this. Yes, I definitely need to get the Russian version because it was way too difficult, and also Stoic philosophy isn't my favorite. I recently realized that I do have a favorite philosophy, and it's not a Stoic philosophy. This one, as I remember, she listened to in an audiobook format, and this book I found in an airport in Istanbul, and I was like, yeah, I should go for it. And this is The Courage to be Disliked by Ishiro Kishimi and Fumitake Goga. Sorry if I pronounced it wrong. So this is basically a dialogue between philosopher and a youngster, written in a form of dialogue. It's like the Plato style philosophy book. Kinda. While I liked it, I did not find anything new for myself. I only discovered about Alfred Adler, and that's all. A lot of points made in this book, they weren't new for me. I think I discussed them with my friend when we were 16. But I still liked it, and I want to read it again. And also, by the way, for some reason this book and The Secret History by Donna Tartt, they stand together all the time. It just happens. And the last non-fiction in this video that I discovered because of her, and this author is Dutch like her, and the book is Humankind, A Hopeful History by Rutger Bregman. This is basically an analysis of the positive side of humanity. You know what, this is something I should have read when I was still in university. I also used to believe that things are dark and yada yada yada, and this book kinda dismantles those beliefs. Okay, I think that in a world that tries to convince you that it's a dark and cruel place, that humanity is bad and yada yada yada, this book becomes especially important, especially in the modern age. And this book goes through cases that prove that humanity is not as bad as we think. Yeah, now when I think about it, I'm kind of surprised that the media tried to convince us otherwise. But is it actually worth trusting? This book kind of goes through that. Okay, the next book is Radio Silence by Alice Oseman. When I heard about this book, I knew I wanted to have it, and I found it on Book Crossing, and it's not in the best condition. I wanna buy a new copy. So this book is very unique to me because this is the first book in English. Yeah, the first book in English that I read in one day. It wasn't an adapted version. It wasn't something that came with Russian translation or whatever. A full English book that I read in one day. And I really like the cover of this book. Yeah, I really enjoyed this one and I want to read it again. The book features a lot of themes to think about and a very unique perspective on some things. And I think the best character in the book is Frances' mother. If you read the book, you know. And also thanks to this book, I discovered yet another favorite book of mine, also by Alice Osman, I Was Born for This. This one I also found in Istanbul airport and I had to choose between this one and the Caraval by Stephanie Garber, and I chose this one and I'm glad I did. I read both books, I like them, but I'm glad that I bought this one. Vicious by V.E. Schwab. I really like the cover of the book, it's a wonderful edition, very beautiful. So basically it's a superhero novel but without the superheroes. Yeah, the book goes through academic rivalry, friends turned into foes, and what it takes to have your revenge and what happens when you turn righteous. And also with some superpowers. This is a pretty grey novel, but not without some positive elements. And finally, the last book that I discovered thanks to her videos. I do not have it with me because I did not like the book enough to keep it. I donated it. The Dispossessed by Ursula K. Le Guin. And I think she said in a video that this book was better off as a research paper or something. And I kinda agree with that. So yeah, Ursula K. Le Guin came up with a very interesting concept. There are two planets. One planet is a planet of guys where everybody is for everybody gets along and you name it. And the other one is way too individualistic and the scientist from the first planet comes to the second and how it turns out. By the way, while filming this video, I just realized that there is one book that explores the same concept where the guys from the first planet, the friendly, everything for everybody, go to another planet, the individualistic one and hierarchical one. And such book is called Незнайка на Луне by Nikolai Nosov. Незнайка on the moon. I think in English Незнайка is translated as Dano. I don't know. I just remembered, and sure, I never finished Незнайка. However, I do remember that it was much more exciting and interesting than The Dispossessed. The Dispossessed felt way too dry and way too dull. Okay, I do realize that probably the language played its part, that it was very difficult for me to appreciate because of the language. Well, after all, I do kinda struggle reading in English, I do realize this now. However, I remember that I read the books in English that were way bigger and much more exciting, much more interesting. Some books are worth read in translation, and the language can alter my perception of the book, but that's another video. I'm working on that. I want to talk about it. And a few honorable mentions, that these books are her favorites and I simply happen to read them as well. She, not under her influence, but it's just a coincidence. The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern, and yeah, I struggled reading this one too. However, I do think of this book and I'm keeping it because I want to read it again. And I really like this edition. I think it's very beautiful. Oh, and I heard of the book before I came across her channel. So I've had this book on my radar for a while. And the second book is The Hunger Games series by Suzanne Collins. I do remember when The Hunger Games were everywhere and I thought I would never read them. But last December, I'm filming it in October 2025, I came across this book in the library, took the chance, like the first one, and decided to order the whole series in one volume. Yeah, I came around. Here I have the Hunger Games in my hands. I read the first one and I started the second. Still haven't gone through it. And that's all. These are all the books that I read after watching the book Leo. Thank you so much for watching this video. Yes, our tastes are absolutely different, but still I managed to find the books after watching her channel. See you next time. Goodbye.